The Nobel laureates in physiology or medicine for 2005 are two Australians. Together, they made a discovery which would turn established medical theory on its head. Inflammation and ulceration of the stomach appeared to be the result of an infection caused by a bacterium, Helicobacter pylori. Proving it would lead one mad scientist to risk his life in pursuit of the truth.
I never would have agreed to him doing it, and he knew that.
100 million H. pylori organisms ready to drink.
When he got very, very sick, I got more and more concerned.
At that stage, we were generally looked on as being a bit crazy.
Cheers.
He tried to talk me into doing it to start with, as well, you know. I didn't really feel like doing that.
In the past, it had been believed that peptic ulcers were caused by stress or by the consumption of spicy food and alcohol. Dr. Robin Warren, who is now retired, formerly worked as a pathologist at the Royal Perth Hospital. It was his keen eye and inquiring mind that first led him to question this theory.
Back in the early 1970s, they'd invented the flexible endoscope, which you could put easily down into someone's stomach and take pieces of tissue from the stomach and fix them quickly, so that the quality of the tissue that I was looking at was very good. The picture that I saw never seemed to fit the old descriptions of gastric pathology which had been written in previous years.
Warren began to identify what looked like bacteria in as many as a third of all the biopsies he was carrying out. Despite Warren's findings, others in the medical world were reluctant to believe that this could be possible.
It was just standard doctrine, I suppose. It wasn't really even taught all that much. It was just one of those things that you know. You know, the gastric juices kill bacteria, and bacteria don't grow in the stomach. And as a rule, they don't. But these did. They challenged me to find more. Now, I like a challenge. So actually, once they challenged me to find any more of these, I took them on. And to my actual surprise, I found more.
Over the next few years, Warren became resigned to unkind jibes from his peers about his outlandish notion, but continued to collect examples of bacteria present in the biopsies taken from both gastritis and ulcer sufferers. But in 1981, a young trainee physician, also at the Royal Perth Hospital, was desperately looking for a research project.
My boss said, go and see Robin Warren because he's researching these little bacteria. He was pleased to see me, I think, because he had been talking about them and people were not taking it seriously. No one had imagined that ulcers could be caused by a bacteria. And it was about 2 years before we had enough patients to look at the data and say, here we are, all the patients, or most of the patients with ulcers have these bacteria, so it may be you could treat ulcers with antibiotics and achieve a cure if you got rid of the bacteria. So we could see that it had very important possibilities.
Barry and Robin were now both convinced they had a simple answer to the treatment of this condition. But they still couldn't find any support or funding from medical or commercial establishments.
The excitement for the drug companies is not there because the drug companies were making so much money out of ulcer treatments. And if you analyse the pharmaceutical industry, you'll see that the pharmaceutical giants are interested in treatments which go on and on for years, like blood pressure, cholesterol, and that's why these are the very big money makers for the drug companies. They don't make much money out of a cure because you can only take it once.
In 1984, desperate to prove their results were correct, Marshall decided to take drastic action which was to have an effect on his wife and family.
Barry had gone through a very frustrating time for about 12 months. He would often present papers and have them rejected. The only way he was actually going to be able to prove that these bacteria came from the stomach was by infecting a person, and he decided, without consulting me, that the only person it would be ethical to try and infect was himself.
It was a carefully planned scientific experiment with Not perfect, perhaps, but I drank a culture of the bacteria and then had an endoscopy after 8 days.
He'd been up every morning in the middle of the morning, the middle of the night, ill, and I could hear him being sick, and at the time he was still going to work every day, and he was looking sicker and sicker and sicker. And at that point I said, right, yeah, this is enough.
Robin Warren did a biopsy on the sample taken from his colleague's stomach and confirmed that Marshall had succeeded in infecting himself.
And these little things in here, there's one of them. See, it's a little curved rod, and there's one there, another one here. All of these little dots are bacteria. And you can see them on the cells down here.
The result was exactly what they hoped for. The Helicobacter pylori had caused severe gastritis and inflammation. As the pair predicted, a short course of antibiotics cleared up the infection in Marshall's stomach lining in just 2 weeks.
For a year or so after he did it, Barry wouldn't tell anybody else apart from me, because at that stage we were generally looked on as being a bit crazy. And he thought if the word got round that he'd been drinking the bacteria, we'd never be able to convince anybody of anything. So we kept it quiet for a year or so, but then finally something else came up and he decided to publish it.
Marshall's gamble paid off. In 1994, the National Institute of Health finally endorsed antibiotics as standard treatment for stomach ulcers. More than 10 years later, Professor Barry Marshall continues to work with the bacteria at the University of Western Australia in Perth.
But I run a laboratory which is now looking at the molecular aspects of Helicobacter pylori. And Dr. Warren is now retired, but he still collaborates on some special projects with me. 100 million H. pylori organisms ready to drink.
Do you want to do that again?
No, I think we're just going to tip it down the sink now. Cheers.
Marshall is now working to create an effective vaccine using Helicobacter. But it's the discovery of the bacterium itself and their subsequent cure for the peptic ulcer which has, at last, earned Marshall and Warren the acclaim of many around the world, including the Nobel Foundation.
But it's a bloody nuisance. I don't get any time to myself anymore. However, you can't have everything, and it's a wonderful honour, and it's actually, I think what I'd say is it's put the final stamp of approval on the work that I've done, showing that, you know, really we were right in the first place.